Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar tonight, where we're going to be talking about building a healthy wellness strategy and talking about how we can really keep ourselves as healthy as possible using some natural and diet and lifestyle things. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Dr. Stephen Moore, and I have been actually Mark Bartlett and I have known each other for a little bit over 16 years. So I was very excited to be able to invite him onto a webinar tonight for everybody because his PhD is in immunology and just a very, very brilliant scientist, and is actually one of the keynote presenters at many of the healthcare symposiums that we host. Just some housekeeping things. If you guys want to go full screen, if you look at the top right of this browser, you can hit that little right arrow there next to where it says chat, and you can close that chat box. You can go full screen, and you can see a little bit more of the slides if you're looking at this on a smaller screen. So a little bit about Dr. Bartlett. So as I said, he's the Vice President of Global Research and Development for Pharmanex. And, you know, one of his quotes is, "It is truly amazing what the human body, including its immune system, can do if provided all of the nutritional building blocks that it needs." His degrees and awards, a PhD in immunology and cell biology from the John Curtin School of Medical Research, BS in biochemistry and organic chemistry from the Australian National University, postdoctoral visiting fellow, he's over at the National Cancer Institute and the National Institute of Health prior to joining Pharmanex. He's been the Vice President of Global Research and Development for, I believe, close to 30 years, working with Pharmanex, which is one of the leader in nutraceutical product development. His areas of expertise are antioxidants, phytonutrients, arthritis, cancer, digestive health, immunology, inflammation and autoimmunity, lipids and fatty acids, liver health, pro and prebiotics, and sports nutrition. So when his research was over at the United States National Institute of Health, he's a world-renowned, which is a world-renowned National Cancer Institute. He investigated the interaction of T cells with white blood cell vessel walls. Bartlett's interest in the role of nutrition in human health and disease led him to join our company in 1996. He possesses degrees in biochemistry and organic chemistry, as we had discussed here. So without further ado, I know a lot of people are very excited to hear this. We're going to break down this webinar into two parts. There'll be a first part that will give an overview of some things that you can do and a strategy for your immune system. We'll then have a separation, and then we will talk about some products that can help support your body and your overall health. And so I do want to give a disclaimer. We're not here to give medical advice. We're not here to treat or prevent diseases. And those are things that you should always talk to your healthcare provider about. And so now that the disclaimer is out of the way, Dr. Bartlett, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Moore. And, how long have these webinars been going on? And this is the first time you invited me to one. So I'm looking forward to a few more in the future. So I've got some pent-up desire, I suppose, to share today. So I really wanted to talk, as invited, on building a healthy wellness foundation. And I thought we would divide it up into some fairly obvious things here: hygiene, nutrition, movement, the impact of stress and sleep on this wellness foundation. We'll talk a bit about GI health and nutrients and bioactives. And I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of really technical detail here. Some of it may be obvious to you, but maybe, hopefully, you'll learn some things from this as well. Because this has been a passion of mine for many years. What the human body can do if it's given the foundation. And, what it really starts with for me is nutrition. So people often ask me, how do I do the best by my body? How do I, stay healthy no matter what? And really, it does boil down to nutrition. People even ask, what product should I be used, or what supplement? And again, it boils down to nutrition. Nothing fancy. And I often refer to people to work that was done by Bruce Ames. He's famous for his work with genomic stability, especially in the area of any additives, food additives, things like that. The Ames test is famous. And Bruce Ames is still sort of doing the circuits of nutrition. And here's a paper that represents a lot of the work that he's been doing for the last decade or so. Low micronutrient intake may accelerate the degenerative diseases of aging through allocation of scarce micronutrients by triage. It's a beautiful headline, isn't it? And you can really geek out on that. And if you don't look closely, you kind of think it's complicated, but it really isn't that complicated. He's focusing on diseases of aging, but let's just focus on wellness. Low micronutrient intake. Well, what does that mean? Basically, we're talking micronutrients, right, which is the vitamins and minerals and other, biological actives that you get from a healthy diet, rich in nutrition. Vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, all of these different things, right? The minerals. So low micronutrient intake, what does that do? Well, it means marginal deficiency. If you're not quite at 100% RDA for these micronutrients that are required, as Bruce Ames looks at it, again, from his perspective, genomic stability and everything, it accelerates degenerative diseases of aging. So you can change the pace of aging just by how your nutrition is. And he proves this through this and a number of other really nice systemic studies. So how does it happen? The body, when faced with a marginal deficiency in a nutrient, has to make a decision about where to send that nutrient. And what Bruce Ames says in his papers really makes sense. Let's give you an example. If you are marginally deficient in calcium, then I've given you a moment to think. You're probably thinking already, oh, I know what happens. That leads to bone density issues as you get older. And I'd say correct. And Bruce Ames would say that's correct. Why? Why is that happening? Because that calcium is needed for systems of the body that keep you alive today and functioning. And that would be the neuromuscular system. So that calcium is used, to create these conduction channels. Every time a nerve impulse fires, it's due to these calcium channels, and these impulses fire as a result of that. So to think and to move are things that you need to do today, and if you're emotionally deficient, then it will be at the expense of how well you age later. Does that make sense? So systematically, if you look through all of the nutrients, B vitamins, those are required for numerous systems in the body, your metabolic systems. Those who know what B vitamins do, in general, they think of bioenergetics. They are cofactors for the enzymes that help to extract energy from the food that you eat. And so what happens if you're marginally deficient? Well, generally, you may notice a deficit in energy. But what you won't notice is that other systems of the body, for example, DNA repair enzymes, are not getting the attention they deserve. So once again, it's the pace of aging that's affected. So what about nutrition then? When it comes to building a wellness foundation, it's important for all of the cells of the body, right? You've got brain cells, as I said earlier, muscle cells, liver cells, intestinal cells, the blood cells, even the white blood cells, right? These are all cells of the body. They all require nutrition, and we want to make sure that we're never marginally deficient in nutrients. You need all of those micronutrients. You don't want to come up short. If you do, you may not notice everything, but there are some systems of the body where you will notice a deficit. So let's shore up our foundation with this good nutrition as the foundation to everything that we do. And I could really stop right now and say that's all you need. But of course, people are always looking for more details, aren't they? Or something a little sexier. I think nutrition is very sexy, but once again, if you break it into a little bit more detail, here's just a few examples. Vitamin A, we know, supports immune cells. Vitamin C, antioxidant activity, immunity. Vitamin E, very similar. Carotenoids, that's an interesting one. I'll talk a little bit more about this, or maybe I should now. But, when your body is, when it comes to wellness, we understand that nutrients are important, but that there's this concept of antioxidants, that there are free radicals that are attacking your body every day. And, these are damaging the DNA, they're damaging the cell membranes, and so you need protection from that. And even when your body mounts an immune response to something, often the weapon of choice used by these immune cells is inflammation, right? There's an inflammatory response. And in that case, It's directed at whatever the target area might be, the pathogen, whatever it might be, but there's a certain amount of innocent bystander damage. The cells that are in the surrounding area need protection. And that's one area where if you have a wellness foundation, if you have antioxidants, carotenoids, for example, that are intercalated into the cell membrane and protecting that cell membrane from oxidation and damage from free radicals, even if it's from within, when we mount immune response or when we are generating energy from those reactions that basically combine oxygen and fuel, there's a certain amount of metabolic exhaust. You need to protect the cells. So, carotenoids, the vitamin E, the vitamin C, they're all important. Zinc is a great example. Actually, I mentioned calcium, but zinc is one that I love as an immunologist, as a cell biologist. If your body is, for example, mounting an immune response against a bacteria or something, or a parasite, whatever it might be, there are certain immune cells, like the one in the middle here, or the one to the left of the screen, the T cell. They're the only ones out of the many, many white cells that are in your body. Only a subset actually has the receptor for whatever that new antigen might be. And when that antigen binds the receptor, what does that cell do? Well, it can't do all the work by itself. So it does recruit to a certain extent, but what it has to do is clonally expand. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term, but I think you know what cloning is, right? Well, that's what the cell does. It gets a message to the nucleus that it needs to divide into multiple copies of itself, a huge army of that particular clone. Now, in order to do that, of course, it has to ramp up division. And part of that division is division of its own DNA. And we know that actually zinc is critical, a cofactor in that DNA replication. So consider a situation where you are marginally deficient in zinc. And we know that actually about 75% of men and women in America, first world country, are marginally deficient in zinc. Well, zinc is used in all sorts of other areas of the body too. So now we have this triage situation, right? So if you're marginally deficient in zinc, then the DNA polymerase is not getting the cofactor it needs. And so now this clonal army is limited in its ability to expand. So I think that gives you a picture. Again, I'm trying to reinforce a wellness foundation requires good nutrition. Don't ever be found short of any of these nutrients, because it's amazing what your body can do when it has everything that it needs. All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about movement. This is an area where, if you want to stay healthy, and again, if you want to build that wellness foundation, do you ever think about movement as being important? Now, as a cell biologist and as an immunologist, I look at movement from a slightly different perspective. Let me give you this perspective. What have we got here? We've zoomed in on one of my anatomy programs, and you can see the backbone there, and you can see this huge artery and all of the arteries, right? So the blood is pumping from the heart and the lungs out into the tissue. It's providing all of the oxygen that's needed and nutrients. And you end up in these little arterioles, right, that are providing nutrients right at the cellular level, nutrients and oxygen. And then you probably know about this system, right? Here are the veins that are returning that oxygen depleted blood, the white, the red cells and everything else back to the heart and lungs. But did you know about this system here in the green? You know about this, right, Stephen? All right, the lymphatic system. This is something that is a little bit underappreciated. And okay, so we know that the blood is pumped out from the heart, and that pressure then brings the blood back to the heart. What about the lymph system? The lymph is actually sort of a fluid balance system. So, when you have that exchange with the arterioles and the venules in the capillary area, it's so tight that actually red blood cells sometimes have to fold over to get through those small spaces. And there's a certain amount of leakage of the lymphatics, basically, the plasma and stuff that's the fluid, the yellow fluid that is carrying the red cells, the white cells in the blood. So some of it leaks out into the tissue. Some of it's actually giving the tissue nutrients, but there's some debris and certain things, and that liquid has to be picked up again. So it's picked up by this amazing lymphatic system that has these little valves that allow, when the pressure gets great, it comes back into the lymphatics. Now, it has to move from your ankles all the way up to your neck through the subclavian veins and deposited back into that venular system so that it's returned and the fluid is rebalanced. This is the lymphatic system. And, how does it get back there? How does that lymph get back there? It's not under arterial pressure. It actually only can happen because there are valves. And when you flex your muscles, when you move, then that squeezing and that movement, even massage, whatever it might be, moves the lymph back into the circulation to the tune of at least 2 liters per day. And what's really interesting about this system is you'll see those little nodules right there. Those are lymph nodes. And there you have antigen presenting cells. You have all sorts of immune surveillance going on there. So an active body movement leads to an active lymphatic system that actually buoys up this wellness foundation, especially from an immune sense. I hope that makes sense. And to some of you that may be new, to me, that's very exciting and a very underappreciated part of the body's wellness systems. Any further comment needed there, Stephen?
Well, I think as we're looking at this here and looking at how the body functions, the visuals are great, right? And there's so much that we don't realize. And, we tend to go by how we feel, right? And we're all rushing to get our macronutrients, our proteins, and we're rushing to get toilet paper, we're rushing to get other things and, trying to survive, right? And, if whatever we can do to optimize, right? There's a big difference between survival, minimum, right? Now you're talking about even marginal deficiencies. In other words, suboptimal levels of these nutrients can cause issues in the body and not allow the body to respond. I mean, my children's nutrition is excellent. And, and the germ theory would say, well, everyone's going to get sick. If there's sick kids around my kids, and my kids will get sick as well. But my kids almost never get sick. And it's because they've got, more optimal nutrition, more optimal movement, less stress, good sleep, all these things you're talking about. And so their body can fight off a lot of these germs that are around them. And it's the same for us as well. Our body has an amazing ability to fight off things when it has what it needs and when things are optimized. And that's really what we all should be thinking is, what can we do to optimize things and give our immune system everything it needs to, decrease severity of issues that might happen.
Yeah, right. We're talking about sort of that headspace between sort of just getting by and being optimally healthy, sort of unleashing the body's full potential, right? And and once again, you just can never underestimate the impact that nutrition and a healthy lifestyle will have, right? Including movement. So hopefully we're doing that. So I guess I thought I'd spend a minute or two talking about things that actually can dampen down, your attempts at a good wellness foundation. And stress is one of those. There is definitely an impact of stress. And, whether that's stress, poor diet, we already mentioned, but sleep deprivation, advancing age, even actually if you overdo it in terms of exercise. So I feel like, yep, you can run a marathon, but certainly don't just do that without good training, right? But overactive, you can't just sort of suddenly say, oh, I've waited a long time, now I need to get physically active, physically healthy, and then you overdo it. That's kind of a stress on the body as well. So, what happens? Let's look at just sort of chronic stress in general. It can impact all of these systems of the body. Interesting, isn't it? Acute stress, on the chronic stress side of it, energy, immune function, memory problems, weight gain, anxiety. These are all things that obviously are not building a foundation. So what do we need to do about stress? You need to find ways to balance your life, to control stress. My wife loves yoga. I love to just run or bike, get out in nature and try to balance. And right now it's not easy because I'm actually restricted to working from home. I find it's even harder to have a good work-life balance when my workstation is always here, right near the where I eat and where I prepare food, and not far from where I sleep. So do the best that you can to balance that, however works for you. And we'll talk later about, maybe some other strategies for that. Sleep is a big one. And this is one thing that we're living in a world right now where you can just have lights on 24/7, right? It's not really a natural world in that sense. We need sleep. And I'm really amazed by the studies that I've read. And I'm not going to go into a bunch of studies, but, the impact of sleep, or the lack thereof, on all sorts of metabolic systems in the body. You have a metabolic program. And, if you're in this sort of wellness foundation mode, and you're eating properly, and you're trying to sleep properly, and you're maintaining a good, healthy body weight, you don't have too much adipose tissue that's sort of kicking out cytokines and things that are pro-inflammatory. If you're on this path, then you have a certain metabolic program. If you miss a good night's sleep, even one night, it's amazing how that metabolic program shifts into the unhealthy mode. It sends you more into almost like a couple of days with less than 8 hours sleep, and an endocrinologist will look at you and go, it looks like you've got the early onset of type 2 diabetes. It is that dramatic. Glucose metabolism, all these things change. Weakens your immunity. So there is a real strong case for getting proper sleep. And, that sleep stress thing is kind of related there. So we need to take care of that and do what we can in terms of our lifestyle so that we can, again, continue to build that wellness foundation.
Yeah, and I think, Mark, as we think about that, I can't help but think about your sympathetic nervous system, right? And your body's designed to deal with stress for a short period of times, but chronic stress actually is catabolic on the body, right? It's like running on overdrive all the time. Your body needs time to recover and needs time to go back into balance. So people that are under chronic stress or aren't dealing with the sleep well, again, are just weakening how their body's going to respond. And we've all been there, right? We've all known where we start to wear ourselves down from whether it's too much travel or not enough sleep or too many red-eye flights or whatever it is. We can have that feeling where we feel like we're going to crash. We just need to take a break. And if we don't take that break, our body gets weak and we're more prone to illness.
Yep. Sometimes we need to make it a priority, right? So, let's do what we can there, and that will help. Just a brief sort of mention of GI health. This is, I'm not going to cover this in great detail, but man, this is an area, if you've been keeping your finger on the pulse a little bit, the microbiome, the role of, these friendly bacteria in the GI system, people are really starting to pay attention to this. Of course, this science has been around a long time. Where I am, I've always been interested in this as an immunologist. You've got, this huge garden of microflora in the GI tract that we know doesn't just sort of sit there and chew up some of or help us digest food. It goes far beyond that, right? And a lot of our immune system is actually in the GI tract, right? We have these cells like these immune foci called Peyer's patches in the GI tract, and they know what's going on, and they are stimulated to a certain extent, good or bad, and then send messages to the rest of the body in a much more systemic way to help, again, maintain that wellness foundation that we sometimes take for granted. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there, but that's something that we need to look after. And we know that biodiversity of that microbiome is important. So a healthy diet rich in fruits and vegetables that have sort of soluble and insoluble fibers. A lot of the colors we're starting to learn now, and my team is doing research with some institutions that are looking at even some of those colors that we find in berries and other things that have a huge impact on the biodiversity of the gut microflora. They impact mood, all sorts of things in the body, cognitive function. So pay attention to that. Again, sort of it goes back to healthy nutrition and lifestyle. And finally, I just wanted to talk about a couple of examples of nutrients and bioactives. So, sometimes you can focus in and use nature to help you a little bit further. One that I thought was really interesting is this reishi mushroom. This is some of the learnings that we have from Asia, right? This is one of those woody type mushrooms, but they seem to be components of that help our body to sort of maintain a state of surveillance that is maybe just a notch higher. Historically, prized in Asia for thousands of years, highly valued in traditional Chinese medicine. And, I'm just using this as an example. There are lots of things in nature, various fibers and things like that. But here's one that I'm particularly intrigued about, used in traditional Chinese medicine for promoting longevity and vitality, endurance, general health preservation. And some of these things are assisted, we're helped. So instead of now going, oh, what about that? Maybe we need to have a trek out into the dark areas of the forest and try to find some of this and hope that we get the right one, because you don't want to get the wrong one. Fortunately, we live in an age where some scientists have put their minds together, and in 1971, a Japanese researcher developed a method for cultivating this so that we can have exactly the right strain in a very convenient form. So we can take advantage of some of these things that nature provides. When you look at this more at a chemical level, it's fascinating. You have these molecules called triterpenes that seem to activate the immune system in very unique ways. I'm really interested in the polysaccharides. And, this is actually what I based my PhD and my postdoc on, is the impact of polysaccharides on human health. And when you think polysaccharides, you just think chains of sugars. But the actual sugar subgroup that's in there, and then the way that it's combined, the type of linkage with the other sugar, can mean the difference between a digestible sugar that's sweet and a fiber that your body can't digest, but that cows can eat and use microbes to digest. Even termites use microbes in their guts to help digest some fibers. And some of these fibers have bioactive activity. And it boils down to sort of some of those immune cells in your body that actually have these archetypal receptors that they call toll-like receptors that are acutely sensitive to what they're calling PAMPs. Not sure if you heard of these, Stephen.
I haven't.
Pathogen-associated molecular patterns. So these are patterns that are often found in nature that are associated with pathogens. So, for example, bacteria have certain types of polysaccharides as their cell membrane. And so you are evolved to have systems in your body that are extremely sensitive to anything that looks like that, a pattern that looks like that, and that will rev up the immune system. And I think that's why the Chinese have valued this so much over the years, because it kind of puts everything sort of on a state of yellow alert, keep things humming. And, when you think about our diets, our modern diets, they're quite sterile, aren't they? I mean, hopefully you're eating healthy, natural foods. The less that you eat with a label on it, probably the better. The more processed, probably not the better, right? And we live a very, it's a very sterile kind of a food environment that we have. And unlike our Paleolithic ancestors, probably not too much stuff fell into our food from the fire or from the trees, or we didn't eat sort of these wild mushrooms. And so, I personally believe that our systems of the body are designed to interact with some of these natural products a bit more than we get today. So, sometimes nature can help. I threw in this slide because what do you think of when you see colorful vegetables like this and fruits? I see the colors, and beyond that, I see carotenoids, these really important bioactive molecules that are mostly, we consider them to be antioxidants, but they also play very important roles in our health and building a wellness foundation. As I mentioned earlier, they actually intercalate into the lipid bilayer of every cell membrane in the body, and they protect those cells from oxidative stress and all sorts of other things. So I really love these molecules that we get from a diet rich in color and even the green leafy vegetables, just for their ability, again, to build that foundation, to protect the cells, even from innocent bystander damage when there are free radicals about. So I think that's probably the last slide in my in this series on really how we can alter our wellness foundation.
Awesome. Well, great, Mark. Well, we have a couple questions here. Then, guys, we're going to take a short pause, but don't disconnect yet. And then we'll talk about really some of the best products that I believe that are on the market that have some of the best quality control that I've seen where you can get very good sources of these ingredients. Because, the mistake that some people might make is, well, we're just going to go run to your local health food store and go grab a bunch of bottles off the shelf. And you may get a bottle that has some of these ingredients, but it may not actually do the job because of the problems that exist in the industry with quality control and standards that are out there. And so Pharmanex, I have found to be the best quality control company in the world when it comes to nutraceuticals. And I really have a 100% confidence in the quality of their product. In fact, I was asking Mark, this is something that many of you don't know that never got out there, but there was an immune product that you guys had with Echinacea and Golden Seal and a few other things. And I was wondering where that product had gone, and because it was discontinued about a year ago. And I just thought, well, hey, maybe there's a few immune products that are there, and maybe it just didn't have enough sales and they got rid of it. And Mark, you gave me a completely different explanation, and I don't think anyone's heard this before. And I know I think it'd be a great thing to share with everybody, to really give everybody a testament of the quality process that goes through with Pharmanex that is lacking in most of the other companies that are out there in this space.
Yeah, okay, thanks. You're going to help me air some embarrassing events that happened recently. Not so much embarrassing for us, really, but I actually have worked for an incredible company. We have a lot of emphasis on analytical programs that we have. We have a really state-of-the-art lab in Provo, Utah, also one in Shanghai, China, kind of sister labs that have the same equipment, so there's really good technology transfer goes between them. We have about 85 staff in our R&D, and most of that staff is in this in the lab, where we're really analyzing everything. And so we take our 6S process, our standard of quality, very seriously. Raw ingredients that come in, we're always checking those, again, with state-of-the-art equipment and techniques, and finished products, making sure that they keep the shelf life. So when an ingredient comes in and all of a sudden we notice that it's out of spec for one reason or another, then we have to dig into it straight away, because we don't want to produce a product that's out of spec. Either it's got something in it that shouldn't be there, or the active is lower than we expect. And in this case, one of those ingredients, Golden Seal, we noticed there's a pesticide that crept up. We said, what's going on here? So we had to talk to the raw ingredient provider, and they sent us another lot, and we checked it again, and it was still not within our spec, which is almost zero. So we had to keep looking around. We have PhDs that specialize in going to find, what is the raw ingredient that we need? What are the actives that should be there? At what level? What are the things that are commonly in there that are adulterants or contaminants? And I guess long story short is we were unable to find a clean enough and a high standard enough ingredient to continue selling that product. And we just don't feel good about selling a product where we don't keep our promises. So, the worst came to the worst and we had to discontinue that. It was unfortunate, but it was a good, testament to you that we take our quality process very seriously.
Yep. Thank you, Mark. And I was very impressed when I heard that. And I know that the healthcare professionals that are listening to this can really appreciate that and be assured that these products are safe, effective, and are going to deliver on what they say they do. So